To master English tenses, you start at the beginner level and move on to the advanced level. But then there's another level, the ultimate level, the level that a native speaker would get to. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to get to this native level with your English tenses. I'm going to teach you over 120 rules for English tenses: present, past, future, simple, continuous, perfect. And to help you move through the video, I've created some timestamps. So if you want to start at the beginner level, just follow on the video from here. But if you want to go straight to the advanced and native tenses, go to the times that you can see on the left here. Okay, let's start with the beginner tenses. And this is where we look at how we use tenses for facts and descriptions. Starting with the present simple. We use the present simple to describe things that are fixed in time. For example here, I live in a 2-bedroom house. It has a driveway at the front. There is a small garden at the back. These are descriptions of things that always stay the same. However, if we use the present continuous, then we're describing things that are in progress. I live in a 2-bedroom house. At the moment, 2 women are walking past the front window. So the walking is not going to carry on forever. It's just happening now. And to make the present simple, we use the infinitive of the verb, except when we're in the third person, he, she, or it, where we add an S. And there are some irregular forms too. With the present continuous, we always start with the verb to be in its conjugated form. So I am, you are, he, she, it is, we are, you are, they are, followed by the verb with ing on the end. Now the verb to be can be contracted as well. So I am can become I'm, you are can become your, she is can become she's. Let's move on to the past simple. We use the past simple for things that are true at a time in the past. For example, I lived in a 2-bedroom house last year. So this happened last year. It's a description of something that was true at that time. And lived is the past simple here. With the past continuous, something will be in progress at a time in the past. I lived in a 2-bedroom house last year. 2 women were walking past the front window when we arrived for the first time. So we're focusing on the moment when we arrived for the first time. It's just one moment in the past, and this was in progress. 2 women were walking. Past simple involves infinitive plus ed, although if the verb ends with e, then you just add a d. There are lots of irregular forms for the past simple which need to be learnt individually too. The past continuous involves the past of the verb to be, followed by the verb plus infinitive. Moving on to the present perfect. We use the present perfect with facts and descriptions for things that are true any time before now. I have lived in a 2-bedroomed house. So this was in the past, but we don't know exactly when. There's no time description here. It could be any time in the past. And without that definite time in the past, we will use the present perfect to describe this situation. With the present perfect continuous, then we focus on something being in progress between a past moment and now. I have been living in a 2-bedroom house for 2 years. So we have got a time period here, and it's specifically between this past point 2 years ago and now, and the activity was in progress during that whole time. The present perfect simple is made of to have followed by the past participle. We can contract that to apostrophe VE or apostrophe S if it's in the third person singular. The present perfect continuous is to have with been and then the verb and the ing. The past perfect simple is used if something is true at a time before another past time. I lived in an apartment last year. I had lived in a 2-bedroom house the year before. So we've got 2 parts to the story. The first part is last year. The second part is before last year. Now, because the events are not in time order, we need to use the past perfect for the second event to show that we're going backwards in time from the time in the story. The past perfect continuous is similar, but here we can use it for a temporary activity before another past time. I lived in an apartment last year. I had been living in a 2-bedroom house the year before. So this is where the emphasis is on something having been a temporary arrangement. They were living in that 2-bedroom house just for a short period of time. Whereas with the past perfect simple, it could have been something that was considered permanent for a longer period of time until the change. Now, these are just some basic rules for the past perfect. We will explain the past perfect in a lot more detail in the advanced and native level sections of the course. The form here is had plus the past participle for the past perfect simple, and had been verb ing for the past perfect continuous. And now let's go on to the future tenses. Now, before we start talking about the future tenses, let's look at the note at the bottom of the screen in the red shading. Adding will is the most common way of making the future simple, but it is not the only way. In reality, the future simple doesn't have a tense at all. We simply use will because it fits most situations that come up in the future. But there are other situations where we use a whole range of other techniques for creating the future. But let's look at will for now. If something is true in the future, or you expect it to be true in the future, then at a simple level, we'll use will. I will live in an apartment next year. That's telling someone this is my expectation of the future next year. With the future continuous, we're talking about something true at the specific moment in the future. I will be living in an apartment on the day I finish my studies. So here we're focusing on this activity being in progress at a specific time in the future. Future simple in this context is will plus infinitive. We can shorten that to apostrophe LL. Or future continuous is will be followed by the verb with the ing form. And finally, for beginner tenses, a quick look at the future perfect. Now, this is normally considered a more advanced use of English, but I'll introduce it now and expand it more in later parts of this lesson. So if something is true between now and a point in the future, then use the future perfect simple. By the end of the year, I will have left my apartment. At some point between now and this future point, the end of the year, this will happen. And we could also use the future perfect continuous for things that are in progress for a certain time before a certain future moment. By the end of the year, I will have been living in my apartment for 6 months. So this is different to the future perfect simple. With the future perfect simple, I will have left my apartment at any time between now and the end of the year. But with this example, I will have been living in my apartment for 6 months. We mean for this period of time, finishing at that future moment. So if we say December the 31st is the end of the year. So if we say July the 1st this year up to December the 31st at the end of the year, this will be true, living in this particular apartment. And the form is like this. Future perfect simple will have followed by the past participle. Future perfect continuous will have been followed by the verb and then ing. Let's leave behind the beginner lessons on tenses and now let's move to the advanced tenses. To teach these, I'm going to take you through some stories and build some stories and show you how the tenses work within them. Let's start with the present tenses. Every morning I study early because it helps me focus. Are you like that? Do you like to study early in the morning? Well, notice I use the verb study in the present simple, and this is because it was a routine. I do this every morning. Because it's a routine, I use the present simple. My next class starts at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Now, if something is timetabled, even if it's in the future, we can use the present simple. If it's fixed in time, even if it's ahead of now, tomorrow, but we know it's fixed at that moment, perhaps it's written down on a schedule somewhere, then we could use the present simple for that as well. Rather than saying will start, we simply say my next class starts at 9 a.m. tomorrow. It communicates that it's scheduled. It's a timetabled activity. We learn grammar in the morning and vocabulary in the afternoon. So here we have a process. One thing happens, then another thing happens, then another thing happens. If this process is repeated all the time, every time, then use the present simple to show that this is permanent in some way. This is a process that is always followed. And when I finish this course, I hope to be accepted onto a degree abroad. Now notice this is future. We have when, which is a linking word that describes something in the future of time, future time. Here, when I finish, notice it's not will finish, but finish as a present simple verb. So when we use when to describe the future, when can be used to describe the past as well, but here clearly we're referring to the future, then use the present simple afterwards. Don't use will. Don't say when I will finish this course, just when I finish this course. Let's move on to the present continuous with this story. Presently, I am becoming more confident in my studies. I am becoming. This is a developing situation. So when something starts in the past and develops, and you reach the present point and it's still developing, still increasing in some way, expanding perhaps, then you could use the present continuous for this. And becoming is very common in the continuous form rather than the simple form. My friends and I are meeting later to prepare for exams. And this is an example of using the present continuous for a future arrangement. Again, we're not using will here. We're just using the present continuous. My friends and I are meeting later. It's in the future. We use the present continuous to show that this is an arrangement that we have made. Finally, we are revising together every evening now. This is an example of a repeated activity. We're focusing on the activity itself. Revising is an activity. It's a process. So we don't use present simple here. We use the present continuous if we are talking about activities that happened over and over again. In a moment, we're going to look at the advanced tenses for the past. But before we do, perhaps you're interested in learning much more than just advanced tenses. Perhaps you want to learn all of English grammar, and you could do that by going on my course, Perfect English Grammar. There's a link below me in the video description. It's got 600 videos with teaching from me, and it covers well over 1,000 grammar points. So let's look now at these advanced tenses for the past. Leo prepared his final exams in the same way every night. Why did we use the past simple here? It's because it's a routine in the past. It was the same way every night. Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, always the same. So use prepared here, the past simple. Now, there are other possibilities. You can use used to and would when you're talking about routines in the past as well. He believed that sleepless nights proved commitment, though he later learned rest was just as important. Why did we use believed here? Well, it's a belief that Leo had, but we use the past because it's no longer true. He changed his belief. If it was a belief that he still had, then we could possibly have used the present simple. Because when we describe people's beliefs in the past, often beliefs don't change. They always stay the same. So we would be commenting on how Leo is all the time. Leo believes that sleepless nights prove commitment. We could have added that in, even though it was a past simple story, to show this is something true of Leo all the time. But because it's a belief that's no longer true, we use the past simple. Let's move on with the story. One night, while he was reviewing formulas, his sister was practicing piano in the next room and the melodies were calming his nerves. Was reviewing, was practicing, were calming. These all happened at the same time, simultaneously. And that's what we use the past continuous for. When we have different activities, but they're all at the same time. The past continuous keeps you in the same moment. The past simple progresses time, which we'll see in a moment. Progresses time. Also, with the past continuous, we'll use it for temporary activities. He was no longer feeling anxious, yet he continued to focus. So, no longer feeling anxious. This is something that obviously had been temporary beforehand. He was anxious for a while, and now he's not anymore. So it's temporary, and we can use the past continuous for temporary situations in the past. Now here's an example of using the past simple to create sequence of time. The clock struck midnight and he closed his books. The two things didn't happen at exactly the same time. First, he heard midnight, then he closed his books. They're not completely simultaneous. And we can use the past simple to report states in the past. He knew he had done enough for the day. Not he was knowing, but just he knew, because it's a state verb. Now let's move on to the advanced present perfect. A student at the local college has discovered a hidden forest trail in the valley. Here we use the present perfect simple because it's a headline. It's the beginning of a news report and will often start with the present perfect. Now, after that, it's possible to revert back to the past simple to give the details or carry on with the present perfect as well. But we'll often start with the present perfect to introduce the news topic, even if we do move back into the present simple. Emma Wright has walked there every morning since she moved nearby. So this is Emma Wright's experiences. So when we describe experiences that happened in the past before now, so since means from a particular time, and that goes up to the present, use the present perfect simple for that. Experts believe the forest has been there for centuries. For centuries feels permanent. So use the present perfect simple to focus on the fact it feels like a permanent thing. And that the trees have grown to their maximum possible height. Now, grown to their maximum possible height, there's a focus on the fact that it's completed. The growing has stopped. And this is an important contrast with the present perfect continuous. Let's move on. For a few weeks, Emma has been exploring deeper paths, curious about where they lead. So here we have a focus on the length of the activity for a few weeks. So when we talk about an activity and we give a time scale between the past and now, we often use the present perfect continuous. She has been listening to the birds' songs, and this led her to the new path. She has been listening. Here we're focusing on the activity itself of listening, not that the listening has been completed. So let's go back to when we said the trees have grown to their maximum possible height. That focused on completion, so we used the simple. But she has been listening. We're not focusing on listening being completed here. Maybe it's something that's finished, maybe it's something that's going to carry on. So we're focusing on the activity itself. So we use the present perfect continuous here. And let's complete the story. Her journeys there have been giving her a welcome escape from the busyness of the city. So this welcome escape is a temporary thing. We're not expecting it to go on for centuries like the forest. It's something that helps her now. So use the present perfect continuous because it's a temporary thing. If we wanted to talk about a permanent thing, the present perfect simple would be more appropriate. So these are the main advanced differences. You could potentially use the present perfect continuous for experiences too, but otherwise the distinctions here are helpful in choosing between the present perfect simple and present perfect continuous. Well, let's move on to the past perfect. With the past perfect, start with these sentences here. Liam had planned his dream holiday for months, but by the time summer came, everything had changed. So had followed by the past participle for the past perfect, but why? So here we use the past perfect simple for past intentions. Liam had planned, and also because we're showing that one event happened before another, everything had changed. When had everything changed? Well, before summer came. So first of all, we mentioned summer came, and then the next thing is actually before what we just mentioned. So we'll use the past perfect simple here. He had saved money and had booked a seaside cottage, yet his friends had decided to cancel at the last moment. Notice this sentence involves the past perfect at the beginning. He had saved money and had booked a seaside cottage, yet his friends had decided to cancel at the last moment. So we have had and had booked, yet had decided. So when we have coordinating clauses after the past perfect, then it's usual to use the past perfect in the coordinating clauses after that. So and also followed by the past perfect, yet also followed by the past perfect. Now there are exceptions to this which I'll cover in the native tenses section, but this covers most situations. He had been imagining sunny mornings and long swims before the storm hit the coast. So now we're using the past perfect continuous. And this is simply to emphasize that it's an action before the time of the story. So this is something that he was doing before the storm hit the coast, imagining, not in one moment, but ongoing, like an activity in his mind. For weeks, he had been working extra hours to afford the trip, but now he had lost the excitement. So this is a time period for weeks. So working happened over a period of time, a bit like with the present perfect. Use the continuous when we are looking at an activity with a stated time period. And also there's a sense that it's temporary. He had been working for a while, but this was just for a short period for the purpose of affording the trip. When he returned, he told everyone that he had loved every moment of his holiday, but he hadn't really. So why he had loved here? It's because we are reporting his speech. Now, we're reporting speech that he made in the past. And when you report speech, you generally move back a tense. So past simple becomes past perfect when you report it. Now, some people don't follow this convention with the past. Some people will still use the past simple, but it's quite common to use the past perfect for this. How about advanced tenses for the future? By this time next summer, Ava will have finished her university degree and will have saved enough money for her dream trip. Now, we're using the future perfect here. Will have followed by the past participle. And this is, we mean these things will be completed by this time. By next summer. At this time, will have finished, will have saved, completed. We also use the future perfect, this time in the continuous form, for things that are happening until this time. No doubt she will have been dreaming about the trip all year too. So the dreaming didn't just happen at a particular moment, it wasn't completed, it was ongoing until this time next summer. Well, that's our expectation anyway. With the future continuous, we mean that something's happening at this future time. While she's there, she will be exploring ancient temples and will be writing about her travels each night. So these are things that she will do while she's there, happening at this future time. Her friends will be waiting for her upon her arrival back home. And this is an arranged future event. Remember, we saw that arranged events can use the present continuous. But now we're talking about an arranged future event that will happen after this moment that we've set in time. So because our starting point is a future moment, we use the future continuous to describe the future arrangement. If our starting point is a present moment and we've made an arrangement after this moment in the present, then we use the present continuous instead. So those are the advanced uses of tenses. Are you ready for the native level? The uses of tenses that you'll find if you analyse what C2 or high C2 students produce, or those candidates going for IELTS 9. If you want to reach those levels, this is the part of the video for you, because I'm going to go into the really advanced uses of tenses, starting with native level present simple. We use the present simple to give information more formally. I write to inform you that your insurance policy expires on the 25th of next month. Instead of saying I am writing, which would be normal, the activity, I make it more formal by saying I write. If I want to make my future plans sound more formal, the government are to introduce a new law. Not the government will introduce a new law, that's correct, but if I want to make it sound more formal, more official, like an occasion, use are to instead. With here and there in the present, we usually use the simple, not the continuous. So you're looking out for you, expecting a parcel to come today, and you see a van coming up the road. Here comes the delivery I was expecting, not here is coming. With something called the narrative or historic present, we talk about a story that actually happened in the past. But instead we use the present tenses deliberately to give the sense to the listener of immediacy, the sense that they're there to try and help them picture themselves in the moment. Like this. This is what happened yesterday. The boss isn't in the office, so my colleague is surfing the internet. Then the boss comes back. Obviously, they're going to catch them doing something they shouldn't do. But we use the present simple even though this happened yesterday, because we're using narrative present or the historical present to make the listener feel like they're there. We often use the present simple in headlines. Boy finds cure to cancer. We would probably say instead that a boy has found a cure to cancer because it didn't happen now, but we use the present simple to give it that immediacy. And when we're writing reviews, we often use the present simple. In her latest movie, Jane climbs Mount Everest. Now, when I watched the film, she climbed because it was in the past. And when she prepared the film, it was in the past. But in my review, I say it as if I'm in the moment. Jane climbs Mount Everest. There may be a sense here that if you're reviewing a book or a film, it's something that's now become permanent, because if you watch it tomorrow, it's going to be the same. If you watch it the next day or read it the next day, it'll be the same. It's become permanent, so present simple is used. We also use the present simple for imperative followed by a that clause. Make sure that you watch her film at the cinema. So we have an imperative here. We have the verb make sure. And then we have another clause following it with the details of the command. So in the details of the command, we use the present simple. Now for native use of the present continuous tenses. We use the native present continuous tense for an activity that started in the past and has got more significant in the present, such as tax increases are becoming a large problem for many people. So it's become significant. It wasn't so significant in the past, and now it is. We often use the verbs become, get, growing, spreading, extended in this way. We use the present continuous to emphasize the temporary nature of something. I'm listening to a lecture at the moment, but the lecture should end soon. So it's temporary. This is just something I'm doing now. And we'll use the present continuous to emphasize something is in the process of change. We are trying out a new system at work, but if it doesn't work, we will try another one. So at the moment, we're making a change to the system. So we use the present continuous to describe it. We are trying this new system out. Now, if you describe someone's behaviour in that moment, then we'll use the present continuous again. Look at the lovely flowers she bought for me. She is being so kind. Is being a present continuous form. And this is because she's being kind in the moment. This is different to describing someone's typical behaviour, which uses the present simple. She is always kind. She is always kind. That's who she is as a person. She is being kind. That's who she is right now. We can also use the present continuous for the narrative and historic present in the same way that we use the present simple. So in the story we shared earlier, my colleague is surfing the internet. Well, we're using the historical present here for something they did in the past, but as an activity. So because we would have used the past continuous if we were telling the story in the past, was surfing. When we switch to the narrative or historical present to give it that immediate feeling to the listener, then we'll use the present continuous. In some situations, the present simple or present continuous can both be used, often when we're talking about feelings. I feel wonderful today. I am feeling wonderful today. Both are used. If you're expressing annoyance with activities, you might use both. He always makes a mess. He is always making a mess. But we wouldn't use it with the negative. He never makes an effort, but not he is never making an effort. We use different auxiliaries to stress statements depending on whether it's the present simple or the present continuous. I do want to be the best in my class. We add that auxiliary do in there to give emphasis to the verb, to stress that I really, really, really want to. But with the present continuous, we just keep our auxiliary am and stress that instead. I am trying as hard as I can. How about native level past simple? To begin with, sentences beginning that. That was a lovely breakfast. We're quite unlikely to use that as the subject before a past situation with the past continuous. It's very likely to be the past simple. When you report what someone said in the present, now we've already looked at the fact that you shift time backwards when you report. So we would normally shift back to the past simple. So if someone said smoking is bad for you in the present, and then you want to report it, you'd say it like this. She told me that smoking was bad for you. We've shifted from the present to the past. But notice the distinction here. If you are reporting their words, shift from present to past. If you are reporting their general beliefs, you can stay in the present. She thinks that smoking is bad for you. She told me that smoking was bad for you. That's what she said. She thinks that smoking is bad for you. That's what she believes in general. If you want to create distance, in other words, make what you say more polite, one technique is often to shift the tense backwards. So instead of saying, I want to find out what is on the menu, say, I wanted to find out what is on the menu. It makes it more polite. With as if, she speaks as if she were an expert on the matter. So as if adds unreality to what you say. And we also do this time shifting, where we shift the tense backwards, to show that something is not real. So it's not real that she's an expert on the matter, but the way she's speaking like she thinks this is true, although it's not. When you're reporting research, there's this really important distinction. With research, when focusing on results of a study, use the past simple. The study found that 80% of people watched online videos last year. This is what was discovered by the research at that particular time. But when reporting conclusions of a study, use the present simple instead, if these conclusions are establishing truths. The study finds that online video games are very popular. So this is the conclusion based upon the results, but it's trying to establish something that is true forever, or true in general at the moment. So we have this distinction between reporting the results, reporting the conclusions. Now for the past continuous. If you want to distinguish between background events in the past and foreground events, then distinguish between the past continuous and the past simple. Use the past continuous for the background. These are the things that are not important to the story, but just add some information about what's going on around the story. That's the background, past continuous. The foreground is for the key issues in the story. Let's have a look at the example here. We drove in the middle of the night. Rain was lashing down as we made our way through the streets. So the foreground information, the key information, is with the past simple. We drove in the middle of the night. We made our way through the streets. That's the story. That's the key bit. Use the past simple. Rain was lashing down. Well, that's not important to the story. That's just describing what's going on at the same time. That's background. So use the past continuous for that. The past continuous can also be used to create distance in the same way as the past simple, when we shift back a tense to make what we say more polite. I was wondering if you could help me is more polite than I am wondering. When you talk about repeated past events that invoked an emotional response at the time, the past continuous is often used for this too. Oh, you were always making me feel proud. He was constantly waking up too late. One of them a really positive response, one of them a negative response. And to describe them with that sense of emotion, past continuous. If you want to put a focus on the situation, not the action itself, then you could use the past continuous for this. I was just speaking to your customer services team and they told me to phone you. So I was just speaking. Well, this makes the situation sound more informal than saying I spoke. If I say I spoke, then I am giving emphasis to this action of that I spoke with them. If I say I was just speaking, it makes it sound more like it's a passing thing. It wasn't such a big deal. And that's one way of perhaps being less direct when you report things. For past intentions that did not happen, I was planning to phone you back, but then I got interrupted. So there was a moment in the past where they made a plan. The plan was to do something after that, and then it didn't happen. And if all these things are true, the past continuous is often used, often with was going to as well. Now for some distinctions between the past continuous and the past simple. The past continuous usually describes activities happening at the same time as each other, which we saw in this story when we looked at advanced uses, but it's worth looking at the contrast a little bit more here. So when I woke up, the sun was shining and the birds... There you go, it's B-I-R-D-S, not B-I-T-D-S. I've corrected it here. And the birds were singing. The past simple, though, describes activities happening one after the other. When I woke up, the sun was shining. Soon after, clouds appeared. Later, it rained heavily. Let's focus on the difference here. In the first example, the sun was shining and the birds were singing at the same time. Background information. In the second example, clouds appeared and it rained heavily, one after the other. Now let's look at using the present perfect simple at a native level. Another way of introducing stories in the past when you're reporting is to use the present perfect simple. The president has landed in Asia. His plane left early this morning and touched down at 2 p.m. this afternoon. So introduce with the present perfect and then switch back to the past simple for the details. Some varieties of English often avoid the present perfect with already, yet and just, such as American English. I already went there. Now, the rules of traditional English would say you should use the present perfect here. I have already gone there. But the influence of American English means this is becoming accepted in more and more places. Actions happening repeatedly between the past and now. Please finish the exercise. I have asked you every day this week so far. So it's on every single day, so on specific moments, but all of this week up until now. And because it's up until now, present perfect. Now, you may be able to do this with the present perfect continuous as well, but here I'm showing you the present perfect simple is one way to do it. In all English varieties, to have can be omitted from structures that have that, to have, and the passive form. Now, that's quite a lot of words, so the example's probably more helpful here. Let's look at the two examples. A video that has been watched by millions is making the news today. Now, with the rules of omission in English, we can delete that has been and just go straight to watched, and it still has the same meaning. A video watched by thousands is making the news today. And that's this special rule with the passive form and a relative pronoun, where in many instances you can delete them altogether. Again, this is going into other parts of English grammar now, using the passive. My course Perfect English Grammar that I mentioned earlier in this video could be helpful for you if you want to explore that more. If you want to keep a story in present time whilst mentioning relevant past activities, then use the present perfect. It could be with the simple or the continuous. Here I'm focusing on the simple. I think everything is ready for our special event, so we're talking about the present time. Special event is now. I think everything is ready now. I've been working hard to make sure the right instructions are in the right places, and I've tested the microphone and speakers. So when did you test the microphone and speakers? In the past. But it's all related to this story, which is in present time. Because the story's in present time, I use the present perfect to bring in these past events. For developments up to now, but with a focus on the past, use the present perfect. Technology has improved significantly over the past decade. Now, if you watched other lessons on the present continuous, you'll remember that the present continuous also involves developments. But with the present continuous, I focus on what the situation is now. With the present perfect, I focus on what has already happened leading up to now. So technology has improved significantly over the past decade. Well, the improvements are definitely clear at the moment, and I'm focusing on the fact the improvements happened in the past up to this moment. If I say technology is improving, then the improvements have happened, but I'm focusing on the fact improvements are present rather than past. The present perfect is often used to show a dialogue is still ongoing. Look at this example. I've spoken to my partner and would like to ask you more questions about the issue. Now, what's the difference between I've spoken to my partner and I spoke to my partner? Both are in the past. Well, remember the difference between the present perfect and the past simple. With the past simple, we use it for a finished activity in the past. So if I say I spoke to my partner, this is more likely to indicate that the conversation is over and there will be no more dialogue, no more conversation. It's finished. But if I say I've spoken to my partner and would like to ask you more questions about the issue, saying I've spoken means I'm bringing this past conversation into the present. In other words, the conversation is still open. It's still ongoing. There could be more to be added yet. So look at that distinction between the present perfect and past simple here. Now for the present perfect continuous. Now, a lot of this is focusing on distinguishing between the simple and the continuous forms. But let's go back to this story, which was in present time, but mentioning past activities, because we can use the present perfect continuous when we bring in past activities, but keeping a story in the present time. I think everything is ready for our special event. I've been working hard to make sure the right instructions are in the right places. When did this work happen? Before now. But what's the time of the story? Now. I think everything is ready. So to bring in that past continuous aspect to a present story, use the present perfect continuous instead. And we can use the present perfect continuous when describing the length of an activity with the present perfect. I have been painting this wall for 3 days. Let's look in more detail at these distinctions between the continuous and the simple. Now, I looked at this in a little detail when we introduced the stories in the advanced section. But now I want to unpack it a bit more, so you're sure. I have been painting the wall. I have painted the wall. If you say, I have painted the wall, the job is over. You look at the wall, it's a finished job. If you say, I have been painting the wall, then you can see paint on the wall. The activity has happened, but we're not sure if it's finished or not because the focus is on the activity of painting. Maybe all of the painting is done. Maybe there's more to do. That's not what's important here. It's the activity that's important. And now for the distinction between the temporary and the permanent. I have been driving a taxi while I look for another job. This means I'm not always going to drive a taxi. It's just something I'm doing on a temporary basis. But I have driven a car since I was 18. Well, this suggests I'm always going to drive a car. I'm not just doing it for a few weeks. This is more of a permanent situation. Now for the past perfect at the native level. We use the past perfect simple for states before a point in the past. I was surprised to get such a low grade. I thought I had understood everything on the topic, not had been understanding. With the past perfect continuous, we show an event was ongoing before the next. I had been looking for my keys when a dog barked and distracted me. So this looking was ongoing up to that moment. Now let's look at what happens when you have a subordinating clause after a past perfect clause. When a subordinating clause follows a past perfect clause, it generally takes the past simple or continuous. So he had been watching too much television because he didn't know his bedtime. Because is the subordinating conjunction. And afterwards, we switch into the past simple to give the reason for the past perfect clause, unless the clause explains something from before. He hadn't been watching too much television because he hadn't been given a bedtime. So he had been watching too much television. The reason was because of something before this watching happened. So we use the past perfect again. Now, when a coordinating clause follows a past perfect clause, we've already seen that we generally follow with another past perfect clause. So he had been watching too much television and she had been drinking too much cola. So and adds another clause of equal value. So if we started with the past perfect, then the next clause should also have the past perfect, unless they share the same subject and verb. He had been watching too much television and he had been drinking too much cola. Well, because they share the same subject and verb, then we should delete the subject and verb from the second clause. The first clause information carries to the second. He had been watching too much television and drinking too much cola. The past perfect continuous focuses more on the process. The past perfect simple implies a focus on the result. He was tired because he had been working all day. Well, the work may or may not be over if we say this. But if we say he was tired because he had worked all day, then the work is over. So similar distinction between the present perfect simple and present perfect continuous. Continuous for the process or the activity, being your main focus, and the simple for the focus on the result or the completion. Use the past perfect continuous for interruptions to a task in progress. We had been climbing the hill when it started to rain. In this instance, the rain interrupted the climbing. Think of people climbing, rain happened while the climbing was going on. It interrupted it. But use the past perfect simple if the task was over. We had climbed the hill when we started to rain. Now, if you say we had climbed the hill, you're at the top of it. You're not climbing anymore. The climbing was finished first. Then the rain happened. And the past perfect continuous goes with repeated acts in a time period, whereas the past perfect simple goes with counted acts. I had been requesting help before they responded. That means I'd been requesting help a number of times, not just once, but we don't know how many. Look at the example at the bottom though. I had requested help twice before they responded. Here the number is specified. Do not say, I had been requesting help twice. Once you specify the number, switch into the past perfect simple. Now with the future simple, before I get to the native level, I just want to add a few more advanced features that I didn't mention earlier in the lesson. So this is to do with the difference between will and going to. Use will for spontaneous decisions, but going to for planned decisions. So if someone says, I'm stuck in mud, and the response is, I'll get you out, we use will, because that's the spontaneous response, the spontaneous decision to get you out. But in the second one, do you know he's stuck in the mud? Yes, we know. We are going to pull him out with a rope. So here we already know that he's stuck in the mud and we've already made a plan. So we use are going to instead. Use will to predict with no physical evidence, going to with physical evidence. My friend thinks it'll rain later. Where's the evidence? Just my friend's words. There's no physical evidence. But look at those black clouds coming towards us. It is going to rain. Physical evidence. We see something and we know something is going to happen after. Will can be used to express future for promises, offers, threats, orders, and responses to any of these as well. So these are all advanced features of the future simple, but now let's go on to the native level, the really high level bits of the future simple. We use will to emphasize a prediction over a plan. So if you say, I will get the top marks in the exam, that's a prediction. But the present tense turns it into a certainty, not a prediction. I am set to get top marks in the exam. That means you have got good reason to believe that's true. It's not a prediction, it's guaranteed. With logical deduction with that. Why is that? Why is your phone ringing? Oh, that will be my mother. It's my logical deduction. I hear the phone. It must mean this. Will can be used to increase formality, where going to might be used instead. So if you say, we will outline our plans for the company tomorrow, instead of we are going to outline our plans for the company tomorrow, will actually makes it more formal. So that's another reason why you might choose will. Use will to emphasize necessity in commands. Instead of just saying using the imperative, put those books back, maybe you'll say, you will put those books back, won't you? So will here emphasizes the necessity in the command. Now, how about the future continuous? Well, you use the future continuous for guessing what someone is doing in the present. Don't call them, they'll be driving home from work at the moment. I'm guessing what they're doing now, but I use the future continuous in order to express the fact I'm guessing it. For this, you need to make sure that you're not actually there. You don't have certainty about it. You're guessing based upon what you know. When you're asking about a future arrangement politely, will with the continuous form can be useful for this. I'm free tonight. Will you be coming out with us? It makes it more polite. And if you have two future actions, use the future continuous for the longer one. A number of volunteers will be at the museum today. When you arrive, they'll be directing guests to the right places. So two future actions. The person arrives in the future. You remember we can use when to indicate the future. And then the future continuous. They'll be directing. So the directing is something that's happening all the time around the moment that they arrive in the future. Now for native uses of the future perfect, simple and continuous. Use the future perfect for anticipating what you think someone already knows. Because you have attended every class, I am confident you will have already learnt everything necessary for the test. So look at the time here. You have attended. That's in the present. It's present perfect here. So will is adding a confidence to the present perfect here. You have already learnt. Well, I'm confident of that. So I say you will have already learnt. I believe that is true about your learning before this present moment. So we're actually using the future perfect for a present, even a past situation. You can use the future perfect if you're imagining your experience up to a future time. By the time I leave college, I expect I will have travelled across the whole world. So that's my imagination up to that future point. And use the continuous form if the activity is planned to continue until the moment specified. When I leave college, I expect I will have been travelling across the whole world. So the difference here is that the travelling continues until the moment when I leave college. So I hope you've learnt lots about English tenses, whether you're at the beginner, advanced or native level of English grammar. Remember, you can learn lots more about all kinds of English grammar aspects by taking my course, Perfect English Grammar. Click in the link in the video description below me to start now.